Hello, everyone. My name is Deja Collins, and today I'll be presenting my project on reducing tantrum behavior in a young child with autism using an assessment-informed demand-fading intervention. One of the biggest challenges in ABA today, especially in younger clients, is that challenging behavior can really interfere with the learning process, particularly during transitions from preferred to non-preferred activities, things such as going to the table to work, maybe going to the restroom, going to circle time, things of that nature. Instead of just trying to reduce the behavior, though, it's really important that we understand why the behavior is happening first, so we can design an intervention that actually matches the function of the behavior at hand. For this project, my goal was to evaluate whether a demand-fading intervention based on assessment results, of course, could reduce tantrum behavior during those transitions and increase more appropriate behaviors like compliance and communication. The participant in this study was a 4-year-old child diagnosed with autism who was receiving services in a clinical setting. Across sessions, I collected data on 3 main variables: the tantrum behavior, compliance with demands, such as coming to the table, and functional communication, such as asking for a break. I used frequency and event recording to track behavior, and I implemented a single case experimental design so I could visually analyze changes across baseline and intervention phases. Before implementation of any intervention, I conducted an interview-informed synthesized contingency analysis, also known as an ISCA, along with a brief functional analysis, to better understand what was maintaining the behavior at hand. What I found out was that the tantrum behavior wasn't just maintained by one thing, it was actually maintained by a combination of escape from demands, access to attention, and access to preferred items. The client didn't just want to escape the demand or to gain access to the attention of adults or to play by oneself. The client wanted to escape the demand, to gain preferred access to the preferred people, and to have that attention. So when demands were placed or preferred activities were removed, the behavior reliably occurred. And when those things were given back, the behavior decreased pretty quickly. That pattern really confirmed that the behavior was being maintained by a synthesized contingency, which is important because it directly guided how I structured the intervention. So instead of using a one-size-fits-all approach, I implemented a demand-fading procedure that directly matched the function of the behavior. I started by presenting demands at very low level, which were 1-minute intervals, basically making sure that the client could be successful right away. Then over time, I gradually increased the difficulty of the demands, and when the client complied, they gained access to reinforcement like preferred items and attention from preferred people. If problem behavior occurred, I temporarily removed the demands and then reintroduced them once the calm behavior was observed. So overall, the goal was to just build tolerance to demands while still allowing access to reinforcement in a more appropriate way. So looking at the graph here, you can see a pretty clear pattern. As the intervention progressed and the demand-fading procedure was implemented, tantrum behavior decreased overall, while the client's ability to tolerate those demands also increased. You'll notice here that as the intervals for non-contingent escape increased, the client was able to go longer periods without engaging in problem behavior. There were a few moments of variability, which is expected, of course, especially when increasing demands, but overall the trend shows meaningful improvement. So instead of immediately engaging in tantrum behavior, when demands were placed, the client began to tolerate those demands and engage more appropriately. Overall, these results support the idea that function-based assessment-informed interventions are really effective, especially when behavior is multiply maintained. The demand-fading procedure worked because it didn't just try to suppress behavior, it actually taught the client how to tolerate demands in a more appropriate way. There are a few limitations to keep in mind with this single case study design, so the results aren't necessarily generalizable to all clients. Also, generalization across settings and long-term maintenance weren't fully assessed, which would be important for future research. But overall, this intervention has strong clinical implications, and it shows that when we take the time to assess behavior first and then build interventions based on function, we can get meaningful and practical outcomes in a real-world setting. Thank you for your time.